Hello boys and girls, welcome to Mrs. Bandu's Math Movies. This is Algebra 1, Lesson 6-8, Graphing Absolute Value Equations. Our objective today is going to be translate the graph of an absolute value equation. Okay, so let's start with some vocabulary. The graph of an absolute value equation forms a V-shaped graph that points upward or downward. And a translation is a shift of a graph horizontally, vertically, or both. Okay, so we are going to be looking at the unique situation of graphing with absolute value equations, what they look like, and what we can do with them. Vertical translation. Describe how the graphs of y equals the absolute value of x and y equals the absolute value of x plus 1 are the same and how they are different. Okay, first off, they have the same shape. They're both V's. If we look at y equals the absolute value of x, that means our intercept is going to be 0. So it's this bottom one, or the one beneath the other here. So y equals the absolute value of x. Y equals the absolute value of x plus 1 has its vertex at the intercept, y-intercept of 1. So we use our intercept to tell us where the vertex is going to be, and then they basically have the same shape. Okay, so the graphs are the same shape. The intercept of y equals the absolute value of x is 0, and the y-intercept of y equals the absolute value of x plus 1 is 1. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward, just a little orientation on that. Let's look here. Graphing a vertical translation. Graph y equals the absolute value of x minus 3 by translating y equals the absolute value of x. So we'll start with the graph of y equals the absolute value of x, and we're going to translate the graph down 3 units. Okay, so here is our graph. Y equals the absolute value of x. All right, and then we're going to translate this down 3 units, 1, 2, 3. And basically from that point, we can see, look, we can now just graph. So this is y is equal to the absolute value of x minus 3. Writing an absolute value equation. Write an equation for each translation of y equals the absolute value of x. So basically we're just going to start with y equals the absolute value of x. To show down 9, we would just say minus 9. Similarly, if we're going to translate this 13 units up, it's y equals the absolute value of x plus 13. Again, negative 9 and 13 would be your intercepts, and they would still, and basically you're just sliding that graph up and down the y-axis. Okay. Number 4, graphing a horizontal translation. Graph each equation by translating y is equal to the absolute value of x. Now, in this case, we notice that this looks a little bit different. When we're sliding left or right, the movement is also encapsulated within the absolute value symbol. And if we're going to do plus 2.5, that in fact moves us to the left 2.5 units. Okay, so basically I'm just going to take this 1, 2, 2.5 right there, and then from there I'm going to just complete my graph, my translation by graphing. And you could actually move this point by point to get it perfectly correct, but you see what we're doing here. Actually, I should probably have it opened up a little bit more. Let me just double check a point here. If this is a point on the line 1, 2.5, really I should be doing that. Okay, 1, 2.5. So I really should have it open up a little bit more than I did. So you can translate not only the vertex, but find a point on each ray and do it, and you'll actually get a nicer, more accurate graph, which I should have done in the first place. Okay, well that doesn't look right either now, does it? Let me try again. So if I'm going here, 1, 2.5. Actually, that was closer to right. There we go. Now that looks a little better. So that's my translated graph of y is equal to the absolute value of x plus 2.5. The quantity x plus 2.5. Okay. Now, here we're going to, once again, we want to translate this to y equals the absolute value of the quantity x minus 2.5. So we're going to start with the graph of y equals the absolute value of x and translate it right 2.5 units. Okay, so you're basically moving in the opposite direction of what your sign would tell you. So if I had minus 2.5, generally I'm going to move to the left, but because it's an absolute value, in fact moves us to the right. So 1, 2.5. And again, I'm going to try to move, okay, 1, 2.5. Pick a point on each 1, 2.5. So I get just a better representation of the correct graph. And again, notice we want to use the straight edge when graphing this, because we can and should be able to get some nice graphs out of this. Freehand just doesn't quite cut it. Okay, example 5, writing an absolute value equation. Write an equation for each translation of y equals the absolute value of x. So since I'm going left here and right here, I want to pay attention to that. That means y is equal to the absolute value of the quantity x. Left is usually denoted by negative, so I'm going to do the opposite and add 10. All right. And to the right usually means plus, but I'm doing the opposite because of the absolute value, so y equals the absolute value of x minus 7, that quantity. Okay. So that, oh, sorry. I think I slid that out of your view. My apologies. Okay, you do actually have about 5, I think, quick checks to do on these. Some of them are graphing, some is simply just writing the translation, the result of the translation. As always, review this, come up with any questions you might have, things you didn't understand, things you want clarified, etc. And I look forward to